Strong way to say it is we're cursing our future. You can curse your future or you can bless your future.
God was saying, I am everything, because I am. Right. Now, mine is a different take on it.
You are a wealthy person.
Yes.
Where are the Bentleys, the yachts, and the jets?
He built the largest church in America with no seminary degree, no formal ordination, and no theological training. For 25 years, that didn't matter. But in 2025, it finally does. And the cracks showing in Joel Osteen's empire aren't small ones. In January 1999, a quiet 36-year-old man walked onto a church stage for the very first time. He wasn't a preacher. He wasn't a theologian. He was a television producer who had spent 17 years making sure other people looked good on camera. That man was Joel Osteen. 6 days after that first sermon, his father died. No transition plan, no training, no warning. Just a grieving son suddenly standing in front of 8,000 people who needed a leader. Here's what's interesting, though. Joel never went back to the camera. Instead, he did something nobody expected. He became bigger than his father ever was. But there's a detail most people skip over. Joel Osteen has never attended seminary. He has no theology degree. He dropped out of Oral Roberts University after less than a year and never returned. Unlike virtually every major religious leader in America, he carries no formal religious qualification of any kind, not one. For a man now influencing tens of millions of people's faith, that's not a small footnote. That's the whole story. And yet, for 2 decades, nobody made it the headline. The question worth asking is simple. How does a college dropout with a camera obsession build the most attended church in American history? The answer starts with understanding what Joel Osteen was actually selling. And it was never really about God. By 2005, Joel Osteen had done something no pastor in American history had ever pulled off. He moved his church into a sports arena. Not a big church, not a cathedral, a full NBA arena, the former home of the Houston Rockets. 16,000 seats, jumbo screens, production lighting, a stage that looked less like a pulpit and more like a concert venue. The price tag was staggering. $12 million for a 30-year lease, another $95 million in renovations, waterfalls in the lobby, 5 new floors, a broadcast studio built directly inside the building. Where did that money come from? That question has never been fully answered. What is known is this. His book, Your Best Life Now, had just hit shelves and was selling 500,000 copies every 3 months. His television broadcast was reaching 92% of American households. 10 million people were tuning in weekly. Joel Osteen wasn't just a pastor anymore. He was a brand. And like every powerful brand, the money was flowing in ways that were difficult to track. Lakewood Church has never been required to publish full financial records. As a religious nonprofit, it operates almost entirely outside the transparency rules that govern other organizations of its size. A $90 million annual budget, tens of millions in donations, and books earning him personally up to $13 million in a single year. But here's what that money was quietly funding. It wasn't missions, it wasn't outreach, and the numbers prove it. In 2005, Joel Osteen sat across from Larry King on live television. King asked him a simple question: is Jesus the only path to heaven? Osteen paused. Then he said he didn't know if non-Christians would be condemned. He said he didn't want to judge. He smiled and moved on.
The Bible clearly tells us that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light, and the only way to the Father is through him. That's not really a message of condemnation, but of truth.
Well, I don't know if I look at it like that. I would present my way, but I'm just going to let God be the judge of that. I mean, I don't know.
The clip went everywhere. Fellow pastors were furious. Evangelical leaders called it a public denial of the most basic Christian doctrine. For a man leading the largest church in America, the answer was remarkable, not because it was bold, because it was deliberately empty. That moment revealed something important about how Joel Osteen's theology actually worked. It wasn't designed to challenge people, it was designed to comfort them. Sin was rarely mentioned, repentance almost never. The cross, the central symbol of Christianity, barely appeared in his sermons at all. What replaced it was a simple formula: think positive, speak victory, expect blessings. Theologians had a name for it: the prosperity gospel. The idea that faith produces wealth and wealth proves faith. Critics called it heresy dressed in a smile. But here's what made it truly dangerous. In 2014, Victoria Osteen stood on the Lakewood stage and told the congregation that worship wasn't for God, it was for themselves.
So I just want to encourage every one of us to realize when we obey God, we're not doing it for God. I mean, that's one way to look at it. We're doing it for ourselves.
The church wasn't about serving something greater, it was about feeling better. The audience applauded, and somewhere in that applause was the sound of something quietly falling apart. But nobody noticed yet, because the money was still coming in. On August 27, 2017, Hurricane Harvey made landfall in Houston. Within hours, the city was underwater. Families were stranded on rooftops. Hospitals were flooded. People were dying. Lakewood Church, a 16,000-seat arena sitting on high ground, stayed locked. Small businesses opened their doors. Tiny neighborhood churches with cracked ceilings and folding chairs became emergency shelters. But the largest church in America, with industrial kitchens, thousands of seats, and a $90 million annual budget, remained closed. The official explanation was flooding, but photos circulating online told a different story: dry parking lots, dry streets, locked gates. The hashtag #OpenLakewood trended worldwide. Joel Osteen said nothing for 2 days. Then, only after the outrage became impossible to ignore, Lakewood opened.
There were safety issues that people didn't see. They see this building sitting up on a high, it looks like a high hill here, but behind the building is where the water comes in.
By then, the damage wasn't to the building, it was to everything the building was supposed to represent. But here's the part that gets overlooked. This wasn't the last time it happened. When Hurricane Beryl hit in 2024, people immediately watched to see what Lakewood would do. The church distributed food and water this time, faster, more visibly, almost like a rehearsed response to a PR problem rather than a genuine act of service. And when George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis in 2020, the entire nation erupted. Protests filled the streets of Houston, Floyd's hometown, Osteen's city, his community. Joel Osteen said virtually nothing. For a pastor who claims his job is lifting people spiritually, the silence was deafening, and the silence was becoming a pattern. In 2021, a plumber was renovating a bathroom inside Lakewood Church. He pulled back a wall panel and stopped. Stuffed inside were hundreds of envelopes, cash, checks, safety deposit bags, nearly $600,000 hidden inside a church wall. Investigators believed it was connected to a 2014 theft of offering money that was never solved. Nobody was ever charged. Joel Osteen never fully explained it. That story ran for one news cycle and then quietly disappeared. But it didn't disappear from the minds of people who had been dropping money into Lakewood's offering bags for years. And it wasn't the only financial story worth examining. During the COVID-19 pandemic, while millions of Americans lost jobs and small businesses collapsed, Lakewood Church applied and received $4.4 million in PPP loans. These were emergency government funds specifically designed for struggling small businesses. Lakewood had a $90 million annual budget. The backlash was immediate. The church eventually returned the money, insisting none of it went to Joel or Victoria personally, but the damage was already done.
Then there's the tax question nobody asks loudly enough. Lakewood Church pays 0 property taxes on a $100 million arena. 0, because it carries a religious exemption. That exemption saves the church millions every single year, while Houston's public schools and infrastructure go underfunded. Meanwhile, Joel Osteen lives in a $10.5 million mansion. And only about 1% of Lakewood's budget goes to missions or outreach. The math was never supposed to become public, but it did. On February 11, 2024, a woman walked into Lakewood Church carrying an AR-15 rifle. She brought her 7-year-old son with her.
Within minutes, gunfire echoed through the same halls where thousands had gathered every Sunday to hear that everything was going to be okay. A 47-year-old man was shot, police returned fire, the woman was killed, and her young son Samuel was struck in the head. He survived, but he suffered permanent brain damage. Here is what the headlines mostly missed. The shooter, Janesse Marino, had prior contact with Lakewood Church. She had been there before. There were warning signs, and according to investigators, the security system that was supposed to protect 50,000 weekly visitors had significant lapses. Warnings had been ignored. Protocols were incomplete. For a church spending tens of millions annually on production, lighting, and broadcasting, the security infrastructure was nowhere near what it should have been. But there is one detail that disturbed people more than anything else. Shortly after the shooting, while Samuel was being rushed to hospital with a bullet in his head, church services at Lakewood reportedly continued. Joel Osteen addressed the congregation. His tone was calm. His words were measured. He prayed for the victims and called for peace. He did not talk about the security failures. He did not address the warnings that were missed. He did not mention gun reform or systemic accountability. He smiled. He encouraged. He moved on. And for thousands of longtime members, that was the moment something finally broke. Something is shifting inside Lakewood Church, and the numbers are starting to show it. Attendance is still in the tens of thousands every Sunday, but longtime members are quietly leaving. Several of Lakewood's closest and longest-serving associate pastors have departed in recent years. None of them have spoken publicly about why. That silence is its own kind of answer. Younger generations aren't filling the empty seats. Only 15% of Gen Z and 16% of millennials attend church regularly, the lowest figures in American history. And the ones who do attend want something Osteen has never been willing to give: honesty, accountability, pastors who acknowledge the world is broken rather than simply promising it will get better. Lakewood's YouTube numbers tell a similar story. Millions of subscribers on paper, but engagement rates have dropped significantly. The audience is becoming passive. People are no longer participants, they are viewers, and viewers leave much easier than believers. But the deeper crack isn't in the congregation, it's in the family. Joel Osteen is 62 years old. His son, Jonathan, occasionally preaches, carefully mimicking his father's tone. His daughter, Alexandra, sings at services, but neither have demonstrated the kind of presence or authority needed to carry an empire of this size. The last transition at Lakewood was sudden, emotional, unplanned. Joel stepped up because there was no one else. This time, the transition is coming slowly, and everyone inside Lakewood knows it. There is one more thing, though, one detail that reframes everything covered so far, and it changes how this entire story ends. Here is the detail that puts everything together. Joel Osteen's father, John, didn't build Lakewood on positivity. He built it on crisis. His daughter, Lisa, was born with severe disabilities. That pain drove him to faith. That faith built a church. The suffering was the foundation. Joel removed the suffering. He took his father's church, stripped out the hardship, the accountability, the darkness, and replaced it with lights, cameras, and a smile that never broke. And for 2 decades, people loved him for it. But here is what happens to every foundation built on comfort instead of truth. Eventually, the world stops being comfortable, and right now, the world is anything but. Megachurches are collapsing across America. Mars Hill, Hillsong, some of the most powerful religious institutions of the last 30 years have imploded under the weight of their own contradictions. Lakewood is not immune to that pattern. Nobody thought those churches were either. Joel Osteen built something extraordinary. That part is undeniable. Millions of people found genuine comfort in his words during the darkest moments of their lives. That matters.
But comfort without accountability isn't leadership. A smile without truth isn't faith. And an empire built on feeling good has no real defense against a world that feels increasingly bad. Joel Osteen is still standing at that pulpit every Sunday, still smiling, still promising that the best days are ahead. But somewhere behind those lights, a question is forming that his smile cannot answer. What happens to the largest church in America when the man holding it together finally stops pretending everything is fine?